This episode of Capes and Lunatics is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. Get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
Are you sorry? Are you heartily sorry for all of your sins? Well, it doesn't matter. For now is the time of your just punishments. Hey everyone, welcome to the finale of Netflix The Punisher, Season 2, Episode 13, The Whirlwind. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz. Hey, buddy. Is that Tristan?
That was Tristan in the background.
Yeah, how you doing?
How you doing?
Well, tell him I said hello.
Maz says hello. Okay. He's very happy to be a part of the family. Okay, tonight's episode, The Whirlwind, Season 2, Episode 13. Frank Pilgrim, Madani, Russo, Amy, Kurt, and the Schultz family. No bullet is left unspent as Season 2 comes to an explosive conclusion. We'll discuss that in a minute. Our director this week is Jeremy Webb, Jerry Conway, John Romita Sr., and of course Ross and Drew all get our Marvel created by credits, Marvel Comics credits. Steve Lightfoot gets our created by credits. Steve Lightfoot went in and he wrote this thing his own darn self. Angela Lamanna, she was executive story editing the whole time. Meanwhile, our hardest working person in show business, the person who gives Angela Lamanna someone to executate over, Ken Christensen, our story editor. Okay. Wow, this episode is one that just takes your breath away. Although I have to say, this is one where it is at once the best episode I think I've ever seen, and then with its very end coda kind of undoes everything and makes it kind of awful. To me, it's like I was so mad by the coda, but we'll get to the coda in a little bit. But
did you honestly expect it to be different? I mean, it just seemed like everything was set right again, or set back to the baseline. At least
there was some casting. What it was is there were casting choices that I didn't like. And we'll talk
interesting.
Okay. We'll talk about the casting choices in that very final scene that I think hurt the property as a whole. And it just goes to show you, these things. These are not one person, one actor, one director. This is a huge collaborative effort. And if one knot is undone, the whole thing can unravel very quickly. But I want to get to that. I want to give this story its due, because this was, up until that moment, this is the Batman v Superman we deserve. I mean, when you think about this and everything that we've led up to in this episode, this even has a Martha moment that makes absolute sense and works. And it's like, would have made Batman v Superman actually make sense and be it basically, when Netflix does this, it just shows you how much worse Batman v Superman was, because they couldn't be bothered to do what these people, with so much less money, so much less, I guess arguably they had a lot more time, but really, the whole thing does still take place in a 1 hour episode.
I mean, I think they had more time to tell the story. I don't know if they had more time to create, the visuals that told the story. On a movie like Batman versus Superman, the amount of planning, the amount of foresight that you need to have to get something like that rolling and off the ground is tremendous. And I think they had much more resources available to them to tell a better story, and they faltered hard.
Yeah, well, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that this show really gives us what we wanted in Batman v Superman, and has that Martha moment that turns it, that makes you go, oh man, you know, that makes sense. That makes so much more sense. But let's get to the start of this, because, and speaking of CODIS, I gotta say, I mean, maybe it's just me, but do you kind of feel like Jigsaw Russo becomes kind of a kind of just a you know also appearing character in this, that it's like his story at the end just doesn't, I mean honestly, what I will say of it is that I don't know how better to end it, because I think
Right.
for a soldier's death, that quiet
I think
death in a hole is probably the only death that you get.
so. Here's the way I felt about that moment. It was incredibly powerful because they set up this domino effect of emotional plateaus that they bring you to, that lead you to this moment where he's calling out to Curtis and he's calling out to Frank. It's like when UFC fighters, when the bell for the fifth round ends and they know the fight is over, the other guy is not trying to hurt you anymore, and they embrace and they hug in the middle of the ring, with the only person that can know what they just went through.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that moment, and he's reaching out, and Frank shows up, and you think they're gonna have that tender moment, because in a weird way they have built this character to be such a heinous and malevolent person, but at the same time they give him this turn that affords him like a back door into salvation, and he doesn't exactly walk through it, he doesn't even stumble through it, but he definitely looks towards that door of salvation, and there's a piece of him that wanted it and a piece of him that was sorry for what he did, but he was still held incapable, to his insecurities and yada yada yada. But whatever.
Yeah.
But you have this amazing moment, and you think there's going to be this exposition of emotions and exchange of thoughts, and how a person felt when this and this, and no, he just shuts it all down and pops him immediately, as he always should have. And
Yeah.
and it was such a powerful scene to me, and I think that's exactly what he deserves for the kind of person that he is, and everything that he turned a blind shoulder to his own actions about. I think that's exactly what he deserved, and we get the same thing with Krista. She gets exactly. It's almost like they gave us like the juiciest steak that they had been tempting us with since the first, and maybe even since last season.
Mm-hmm.
Like they build him up to be such and he gets the death that he deserves. That's how I felt about it. I thought it was like final, didn't get any possible. I mean, like after showing him the door to salvation so many times, he didn't deserve to have it in his final moment. So in
Yeah.
that, I think they were denying him something that he wanted more than anything else. Even the whole time, every other thing that he did was just, at least in the second act of his character, was done to find brotherhood again, or to find
Yeah.
meaning and find purpose. And he
Yeah.
fails at that and reaches out for the last straw of hope, and he denies him that. And it's so dark and it's so fitting.
It is. It is. And what I will say about it is that at its core, what we're looking at here is a man who wants, really, he wants his deathbed he wants his deathbed absolution. It's like, I want to live my life for myself, but then with my last dying breath, I want that priest to show up and give me that communion and say, you are forgiven for all the sins of this world, without having, and for what it's worth, this is the problem with that deathbed confession. It's that, you have to assume that you're going to be given that moment to have that deathbed confessional. And of course, he's not given that, because, not for nothing, as you said, the door was open to him.
Mm.
He could have walked through that door. He could have had redemption so many times.
Yep.
He could have
A
just,
part of him even wanted to.
well, of course, the thing is it's like we all want redemption, Maz. We all want to be good people, but that means, you have to do something that you don't want to do, because if being a good
Right.
person was easy, everyone would be good. And that is the thing. And for him, there were so many other things he wanted.
Mm.
He just had to get himself to this point. And of course, for him, it winds up being he has literally nothing. And
I
Matt,
mean,
yeah,
when you find him in the garbage,
hmm
when you find him in the garbage, they almost make you think that that's the ending they're going to give him, and it's crazy, and you're like almost satisfied with it, but they're like, no, but wait, there's more, and they wanted to give him an even worse situation for him to confront, not to just wake up from a stupor and not know that he's dying, or to have a chance to come to terms with his sins
yeah,
and to ask for absolution and be denied it.
yeah.
They said, no, even the garbage isn't good enough for him. Let's bring him down and let's get the people. Oh man, it was beautiful.
Although I gotta say that Doctor is like my new favorite character in the MCU because we see him again at the very end when
Huh?
Frank is in the bus station.
Really?
Yeah, you see him and his like Asian girlfriend, and they're like walking really fast with like hats and
Oh,
glasses on.
yes, no, but that's because of their gait. I was like, there was a point of interest. I said, they're trying to show us something, but they just
Yeah,
walked off screen. So I said,
yeah.
maybe it was just, really good extras or something. Okay, but
No,
interesting.
that was the Doctor with his money and his girlfriend, and they're heading out of town because he just threw a
Ah,
guy with a lot of money in a duffel
oh,
bag.
that's right. He has the duffel bag. Right.
He
Good
has
for
a
him.
yeah. He didn't throw the duffel bag away. I
Mm,
was actually
mm,
kind of surprised by that. I actually thought maybe he might have sewed him up a little bit, but it really does just seem like he just tossed him in the trash.
right.
And just to give us a bit of backstory here, so the reason why Russo has to go do the Doctor is because after Madani throws Krista out the window,
Mm, mm.
who and she is alive. We do see her like neck brace and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, she's not for nothing. She's gotten like the least damage of anyone in this series.
Right, it's true.
So I'm sure our Marvel Harley Quinn will be back if we ever get back to this story.
Mm,
Because really, this is the Joker Harley Quinn story again, told so much better.
right.
Because it is this idea of this woman who brought the trauma to the table as the psychiatrist, and it's
Mm,
not even that the Joker or in this case, Jigsaw manipulates her so much as they're manipulating each other and both working towards their own. They have their own. Their madnesses are their own,
right.
and so they're both looking at some kind of redemption, but basically it's the blind leading the blind. So I love Krista. She's just an amazing character. She doesn't get much in this episode because she got
Yeah.
thrown out the
Well, I
window in the
mean,
last one.
she doesn't get much time, but that moment where Madani gets to tell her off,
Mhm.
ooh, that's sweet.
Yeah,
That's
well,
so sweet. It's
yeah,
just
yeah,
man,
but that was
cause like
last episode. That was last episode.
no, no,
So,
no, 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 no. No. In this episode where she finally sees her in the hospital
oh, she
and
does.
she's like, oh, he's going to come find you and he's going to kill you. She's like, look, I put 3 bullets in him, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, he's going to, for what you did to me. She's like, no, you did this to yourself. And she
Yeah,
has to sit there and let that sink in that Russo is dead.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's a really, really good moment. I enjoyed that thoroughly. I was
Okay, yeah.
smacking and licking my lips with, and Tim, Madani has
Mm.
got to be like the Kramer of female FBI agents. She falls ass backwards into good fortune all the time. She screws up and like she probably should have thrown her out the window. No ramifications for that. And then she becomes, at the end a CIA agent and all sorts of like she does complete and she gets to have her I told you so moment with Krista without really, doing anything to earn it. But it's like it's a little
Well,
frustrating, but it's
you know
interesting.
what it is arguably, and her and this is one of these things I'll say. Her becoming a CIA agent
Oh,
is literally her becoming and I forgot the guy from the first season who was actually running the heroin. Um,
oh,
the
I don't remember.
the guy but the guy who was like the CIA, he was the spook who was running the black ops
Right.
for
The bald
Frank.
guy.
Yeah, the bald guy. Not the colonel that they kill in the last season of Daredevil, but the
Right.
or not the last season of Daredevil, but was it the last season of Daredevil? No, the second season of Daredevil with Elektra.
Huh.
But in the first season of Punisher, Yeah, she basically is
Mm-hmm.
becoming that character who is the privileged,
Ah,
wealthy, because she is wealth. We know she's wealthy. We know
right,
she's privileged. We know that her family has money and connections,
right, right.
and she's
And she's getting more and more comfortable with killing.
oh yeah, well
Uh,
she's very comfortable with what needs to be done, and
Right.
or arguably. Now, of course, the other guy's turn is that his avarice leads him to, and again, this is the idea that money is the root of all evil. It's the avarice of Russo. It's the avarice of the other guy, not content to just be powerful. He also wants to make sure he's super rich too, and has to start selling heroin. It suggests that really it isn't that you can be a horrible person like a Frank Castle, like a Nick Fury in his own way, um, and kill people because you think it's the right thing to do. Um, and so long as you're not doing it for the money, so long as you're just doing it because these are people that need to get killed, um, it's okay. Your soul is clear. Now, granted, I'm sure Matt Murdock would have questions about this, about due process and the like, but and for what it's worth, Frank calls her out on that. Says, I guess you just got sick of reading people their rights, huh? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but I do like when Russo comes up to Madani at the start of this episode, and they do
Mm-hmm.
have their little fight, and Madani puts her 3 bullets in him. That is, and he keeps on coming because, of course, he is full of rage and full of anger, and this is one of the things I like is that he chokes her out, but that doesn't kill her
Right,
because to actually kill someone by choking them out, you actually either have to fully crush their windpipe, which he would know he didn't
right.
do, or you
Or
have
you'd
to
have to hold it for a very long time. Not a very
exactly.
long time, but
Well, a few minutes, longer
right,
than he did. Longer.
right.
Basically, after
What
they
was
pass out, you have to hold it for like another 2, 3, 4 minutes.
I'd imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
But what was interesting to me is when he woke up, he didn't kill her before he left. I
Mm,
mean, I guess maybe he wasn't in any shape to. He just wanted to get
yeah.
out.
Well, I do wonder if maybe he decided to give her that. It's this idea that he's trying to do a face turn, and he's been
Uh,
trying to do a face turn since the last episode.
uh,
But at a certain point, you're so far gone all the little niceties you do now, it's like Andrew Carnegie,
uh,
Andrew Carnegie did what he did to get to be a billionaire, and then he really wanted to get into heaven. And he has much said so. A rich man has to get into heaven somehow, and he created these massive charitable foundations because he felt I have done so much wrong in my life, and I need to make sure I can give back before I die because I know it's like the good place. I know my ledger
right,
is in the red, and I don't know how necessarily to get it back into the black. And whether or not he ever did is a question for people more aware of the cosmos than me. But at the point where he is at, even now, I think here's what I'll say. I think he knows enough about killing people that he didn't kill Madani was a choice. Much in the same way that not killing Russo was a choice for Frank. I think in both cases, neither one of them wanted to cross this particular line. In Frank's case, it was that he had this brotherhood. In Russo's case, it is that he wants he knows he's in the wrong.
and it's hard to kill somebody that's passed out and not attacking you. You don't have that. She was coming right for me
Oh
defense.
yeah, well
Even in
yeah,
your own mind, it takes a lot more. I imagine, like
Well, that's true.
fortitude or
Yeah.
whatever to try to do that.
To take
I don't
that
know.
life in that moment when you have the power is a little harder than when you're just shooting, you know.
And you've
Although
been hit by
for what
3 bullets. And,
yeah, and for what but though for what it's worth, he had no problem killing those hookers, you know. You know, he killed those three ladies, not even a thought, because for him at that time it was about how do I beat Frank, and that's always what he said is how do I beat Frank. And which is why I think when Frank comes in at the end, and he is just, you know, it's an interesting question because on one level it is a mercy to end him quicker, you know. Um, but
I think the physical torture and the physical pain pales in comparison to the emotional toll in that final moment.
yeah,
And I think he knew that too. Because
yeah.
both of them are so familiar with pain that it almost becomes a sidebar kind of thing, you know?
Well, yeah, one can imagine. Although I will say this much, Krista is right
In
in what she says to Madani. When Madani is saying, you know, I put three bullets in him, he's dead, he's dying, yada yada yada. But the fact of the matter is, you know, he actually was still alive. Had he
right.
actually been patched by that doctor, he totally would have gotten back up.
Right,
And
but all of those things are factored into the equation when you think someone shot with 3 bullets has maybe 3% chance of living. He almost, you know, maybe,
yeah,
but there was only a 3% chance, and you know,
yeah, but
so it is what it, so
but not for nothing. This is a Punisher level character. You know, I mean that's the
also true.
that's the point of that. And like if this was me, yeah, I'd have been dead. I wouldn't have gotten out of the apartment. You know, it's like, yep,
Yeah,
I'm dead. Okay,
I would have died in the first episode.
without a doubt. You know, I would. Well, no, I would have gotten out of that bar right away. I would like, nope. Have a good day.
Yeah, that's
Wouldn't
probably
even
true.
finish my beer. I said, you know what? They can have my beer. Um,
Right, right.
no, it was just it is, but it's a way to play to a comic book trope that the
Mm,
guy always comes back. That the guy is that there's no body, no death.
right, but this isn't Batman. See,
Well, yeah, but the idea is that you know, um, but they're playing with it. And again, this is what I'm saying.
right,
Again,
sure.
just think about
But
why this is better than the DC
I
film.
just don't think there's any room for Krista to have anything good in this moment. That's all I'm
Oh
saying.
no, there's nothing good. No, what I'm saying is for the universe in which she lives, up
Hmm.
until the moment that Frank puts the extra two bullets
Right.
into Russo, she's completely right.
Right, but merely with a 3% chance at being right and being it technically, just because I can't prove it is not, you know. But
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is demonstrably from what happens in the story, because
sure.
not for nothing, you know, the
No,
fact
but
that the doctor.
I don't think it erodes Madani's argument, and I don't think it erodes its emotional impact as it lands on Krista any bit.
No. On Krista's no, because Krista's a woman of science. She knows he's right.
That's also true. Right.
Yeah, she knows Madani is right. What I'm
Right.
saying is that because this
Okay.
is a comic book universe,
Right.
you know, absolutely Russo got out. Absolutely Russo got to a doctor. Absolutely Russo got the bullets out of him and was still alive.
Yeah.
And even after the doctor decides not to mend his wounds and to just throw him in a dumpster and take his money and run. And by the way, like I said, that doctor, I love him. I love him. It's like, look, I want you to understand, man. I am the reason I'm not working at Mount Sinai is because I am not a good doctor. You know, this is not what
Right.
you know. I do. I pull bullets out of guys who got shot in the butt. You know,
Right.
I am
I
not.
love that he wanted. I love that he wanted to put him under, and Russo knew exactly that if he let him go under, he was going to throw him in the garbage. And you know he
Well,
was right to not want that. And as soon as he got the opportunity, he threw him in the garbage.
you know what?
So
I'm
to
gonna
that
say
point, it's
something.
interesting that he tries to ask him to go under because that's exactly what he was planning to do, and that's the
Well,
reason he said it.
see, I'm gonna say that wasn't his plan at all.
Oh, really?
I'm going to say that his actual plan was, look, I'm going to do my best. You are going to die, and I'm probably going to take your money and throw you in the dumpster. But I think had he let him put him under, because not for nothing, he doesn't finish the job. He still has his Hippocratic oath.
Right.
And
so yeah, maybe he would have taken the money, but he would have patched him up and at least let him live.
Exactly. Like I said, in the absolute worst case scenario, he would have woken up in that hospital room. He'd have taken the money. Although again, you're not going to take that guy's money if you're patching him up. So I think
that's also true, right?
It's like, or you would have taken whatever your fee was supposed to be.
Right. Because like it's a difference between leaving a witness alive than actually bringing a witness back to life.
Yeah, but I think the guy, had he not passed out from the pain, because he's sitting there, he's like, look, I don't care how badass you think you are.
You're gonna flinch, and I'm gonna take 2 inches off your liver.
Exactly. Although, for what it's worth, a liver will grow back. Actually, a liver is not your worst thing. It's nicking your intestine.
Ooh.
And of course, that's assuming his intestine isn't already nicked.
Oh yeah.
Because where those shots were, there's a good chance he got something.
Yeah, and I think the doctor probably knew, even if he does take the bullets out, patch him up, internally he's gonna walk outside and last maybe a day.
Well, that's basically what the doctor's saying there. It's like, trust me, dude, this is
What's
not
the point?
But of course he's a superhero character in a superhero universe. And he's ready to get his power up, and it never comes, of course. Or to be fair, it comes, but it is a real world power up where he's running on adrenaline and nothing, literally nothing else, because he's out of blood. It is just adrenaline keeping his body pumping.
Yeah, but it just occurred to me that we are in a universe where the hand exists. So he could be exhumed and brought back to life later on.
Yeah, but they used up a lot of their bones already. I don't know if they have enough dragon bones left. I mean, really, you got to remember that was the whole thing on the Defenders. It's like, hey, they kind of used the last of our dragon bones to bring back Elektra. Now, no one was complaining we were using them to bring back the head of Rand, but
Right.
I mean, without a doubt, there is definitely.
Although I imagine, financially speaking, the head of Rand is probably a much bigger asset than a ninja. It is very far-fetched that they would waste all their money-making, golden goose juice on a ninja.
Well, yeah, and again, it goes. It comes to religious zealotism.
Fair enough.
And that's what you have to remember, that these guys are religious zealots. I mean, the dragons may be space monsters from another universe.
Oh, but they've seen them. True.
But they have come. But they're cowering naked apes on the third dust ball from a second-rate yellow star at the far end of the galaxy. It's like they think these are gods, and So
it's a holy ninja. Fair enough.
Exactly. Well, so within her mind.
Right. They're.
Yeah. But for what it's worth, in their own way, that we know that from Madame Gao that they do know that chi exists, and they do know how to channel chi and how to do all kinds of crazy magic with chi. So it's not like it's not without basis, but it's also this idea that one warrior. This is what I always say: Superman is useless against a nuclear holocaust. It's like if humanity wanted to destroy itself, Superman can't save us. Superman can maybe stop 1, maybe even 1,000 nuclear warheads. He's not going to stop them all. And we have enough to blow up the world 7 times 7 times. And, Superman is not going to be able to save you. And Elektra ain't Superman, It's
right. And he can't unradiate or irradiate, I don't know if that's a word, but undo the damage of the radiation leaked onto every living and inanimate thing on the planet.
Exactly. That's I mean, for what it's worth, superheroes, they gain popularity in the 40s and 50s, but the reality is that, for what it's worth, the reason we don't have superheroes is because the government doesn't need them.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that the furthest our imagination can reach as far as creating the ideal mythical superhero, we created him, Superman. He can do all the things every other superhero can do and more, right? For the most part. And even he can't stop what we actually came up with.
Well, yeah.
Like,
Well,
the supervillains that we became, even our most grandest imaginations, can't stop.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, what it really is that Superman exists in a reality that is a four-dimensional space governed by time. Um, and this is why, of course, you will, of course, this is why, for what it's worth, Mixoplex, Batmite, etc., are fifth dimensional because they exist outside of space and time, and maybe they could have effects on things that are different. But of course, being outside of space and time means that you're, and this is what I always say is that having to exist in a four-dimensional space when you are fifth dimensional probably makes you act really crazy because
Either that or you don't really see the actual entity or person, but you see a proxy of them that is molded to fit your TV screen. You know what I mean?
I mean it's entirely possible that too. I mean really since it's all hypotheticals, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But
Anyways, let's talk about John
let's talk
and
about John. Oh,
Frank.
John, I love John. Man,
Yeah, and
when you talk about a
another
face
great,
turn, when you talk about a face
right.
turn,
No, but even from the get-go, you sort of felt for me. He's pitched as this big evil guy, but little by little, not just in this moment is what I'm saying. Like even before they're building this track record of maybe feeling some empathy for the guy, and then here it
yeah.
fully comes to fruition. You know?
Well, again, well, what I'll say is, and again, this is what I will say about John is, like Russo, he sought to gain something. But what he sought to gain wasn't greed,
Right.
but a family and stability and a home and a life. And, it's, as I always say, like, my favorite scene, Battle Beyond the Stars, John Voight as the greatest assassin in the universe. It's basically Seven Samurais in Space. It's a
Oh
fantastic film.
wow.
Oh yeah, no. If you've never, Mozz, look up Battle Beyond the Stars. You might be able to find it on
Huh.
TV. You'll have to watch
Right on.
commercials on TV. But Battle Beyond the, it is
Huh.
just an amazing film. I mean, it's not a good film, but it is an amazing film.
I dig it. I dig it.
And you have this character played by John Voight, who is, I believe it's John Voight, but I could be wrong on that. But
Yeah.
I often am. But he is like he's like the universe's greatest assassin. He kills people left and right and has billions of dollars. But because he's the world's greatest assassin, he's wanted on every planet in the universe. So he has nowhere to spend his money. And when the young guy goes out looking for the people to join the army to defeat this coming invasion, and he comes to him and he says, oh, we can't give you any wealth, but we can give you a safe place to stay and a warm meal and a safe place to stay. And he says, believe it or not, that's worth more to me than all the money in this room right now, because this money is worthless to me right now. But if I could have a warm place to stay and a good meal, that would be worth it. And that is John Pilgrim's story. He is a guy who is, in his own way, the world, he is his own, super predator fascist Punisher character who really just wants to have a home. And of course, his story is that he, he basically found him basically like Leroy Brown. The song "Bad Bad Leroy Brown."
Bad
Yeah,
Leroy
and
Brown.
of course, the end of it is that the two men took to fighting, and when they pulled him from the floor, old Leroy looked like a jigsaw puzzle with a couple pieces gone. Because Leroy learned the lesson about a messing with the wife of a jealous man, meaning that it doesn't matter how bad you are, if you find yourself flat on your foot when everything goes down, you find yourself flat on your foot. And poor
Right.
John Pilgrim.
Everybody's got their limits. Everybody's got their
Exactly. And
boundaries.
poor
Learn to
John.
see yours before you come up on it.
I know. And, as we always say about, picking fights with random people in the Marvel Universe, it's like, how do you know this guy doesn't have laser eyes?
Right.
And for what it's worth, all we know is that John Pilgrim might have gotten a face full of laser eyes
Hey.
from some black guy he decided to, call a boy at some point. And it's like, you know what, friend? You
Yeah.
kind of should. Oh, okay. It's now my headcanon. Time traveling bishop is who messed up John Pilgrim in a bar in Pennsylvania. Bishop's a well,
Yeah.
you know who Bishop
Hmm.
is. Yeah, but it's just the idea that it's like that is perfect in that whole concept and that whole structure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I love
So
the begrudging respect he has for him in that moment. Like sometimes, occasionally, when you're very different than everybody else in the world, it's rare when you find somebody that can understand the way that you think. And in Pilgrim, he says this guy's very much like me. He never quits, and he's impossible to kill. He always escapes, and he's tough as a son of a gun. And he's like, "What are you a maniac?" He's like, or what's the deal? I just love that moment that he had that begrudging respect for him.
well, and for what it's worth, again with and okay, so my first favorite point in this is and this is when he does his first face turn, when he lies to the
Mm.
Schultzes about Amy.
Mm. Mm.
Because after Punisher calls the Schultzes and says, "Hey, I got your son,"
Mm.
beats the heck out of your son and all that kind of stuff. Um, okay, don't lose that, Tristan. Okay, he's playing with my notary stamp. He's notarizing random pieces of paper. Yes, but you know, when when after the Punisher basically calls the Schultzes call Pilgrim, and they say, "But the girl's okay, right? You have the girl." He's like, "Yeah, girl's fine," without
Right.
really knowing where the girl is, because he knows he doesn't
Right.
have
But
her.
well, in his mind, it's also like it's my job. I have to do it. I will have the girl.
Oh no
So
no
I
no no
have the
no
girl.
no! I saw that 100% as you have my kids. I'm going to tell you whatever I need to do to make sure they're safe.
Well, yeah, that too,
And that's what it comes down to is
for sure.
because that's the thing. I think all Pilgrim wanted to do ever when he got here was just be a man with his family, you
Right.
know, and
But
work.
I also think that in order to be able to do that job, you really have to believe in the reason you convince yourself you're doing it. So he had to take on that image, that facade, and he had to buy into it. He had to believe it.
Oh,
So it is sort of like a dismantling of that and a
yeah.
conscious recognition that you are doing that.
But for what it's worth, I think he absolutely embraced that in the start of the
Right.
series.
Right.
But what
Because
happened
it was a
is
tool.
yeah, well, but what happened is that as the series went on, they kept on pushing him further and further, and he's like, if you were really righteous people, you wouldn't be asking me to do this.
Right. And I think the moment it sort of gives him permission to fully commit to or maybe it really didn't in that moment, but it was one of my favorite scenes when Amy has that little conversation with him in the car. And for the whole season, Amy has acted as an adult would in every situation, handled herself very, very effectively as an adult would. But in this one moment, you see her perspective on the world and how she feels about human beings and their relationship to everybody else and to the world, and the hopefulness in her outlook. And in saying, about what her experiences are and how people can change and blah, 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 you can always turn them around. And in that moment, she's still a kid, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes that sort of childlike wonder and the belief as a child in the possibility of the world to allow Pilgrim to feel that moment too,
Mm-hmm.
and to maybe view himself openly in that moment. I thought that was a really, really cool moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, really, like, this is a great episode with thousands of cool moments.
Oh,
And at no point does it. I mean, well, except for, like I said, except for me in the very last scene, it does disappoint, but it does make it through. And let's get to Pilgrim's story. So,
mm,
um, you know, so basically, Curtis gives the senator to Mahoney
mm.
after the Punisher has gone to get Amy, because Amy didn't actually get captured by Pilgrim. She snuck away, but was smart enough to go into the trunk of his car and get driven to where he was at so that she could see where he was and what he was doing. And again, Amy is such a BA in all this. I do
Oh
love her.
man.
She is just such a BA, and I love that aspect of her. But she finds where he's at, and Frank goes, she calls Frank to say, I know where I am. He hasn't seen me. Um, and Frank goes to get her. And then, well, Curtis is there with the senator. Curtis is like, what the heck am I doing?
Mm.
Why am I doing this for Frank? And,
Like
it,
this has gone to a whole nother level. You are sitting here actively in the act of being the kidnapper of a senator. That's insane.
yeah. Well,
Like,
exactly.
like your life is over. Your friends will never hear from you again. Kind of insane. Like,
Yeah.
wow. You've got to really start. And it's like, he made the only logical decision he could have in that moment. Really.
Well, exactly. He did, without a doubt. I mean, but, and more along the lines, it's like the senator isn't a bad guy. We can see, and Frank even says this, like, when he says to the Schultzes at the end, it's like how you turned out a kid who actually cares about doing good for people.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But although to be fair, that is not unheard of. The idea that the people that do all the evil to put the child up into the ivory tower, that it's the ivory tower he sees, not the death from below, and so he does want to make the world better because he wants everyone to be able to live in a good and just world. You know,
Right.
and to be fair, whatever religious ideals the Schultzes adhere to, it is based on an idea of universal brotherhood in the sense that they are not racist, they are not you know judgmental in that way. They're murderous sociopaths, but at least they're not racists. You know.
Right, but I mean, I don't know that we have definitive proof of that to begin with. And secondly, the way they treat,
Yeah.
their son's sexual orientation is indicative enough of their worldview, I think.
This is true as well. So, without a doubt, there's a lot of problems with the Schultzes, though.
Right. And
Joyfully,
I loved that they that Mrs. Schultz laid into that whole Lady Macbeth side of that character. I thought it
oh
was great.
yeah, oh yeah, it's just a spot. It'll wash out with a bit of water.
Right, right, right.
And in her redemption, she never once has an out damn spot moment. She is like
No,
the whole time.
no.
She is like, yep,
Yeah,
absolutely
resolute.
resolute, because you know what? Dang it, she has built her little castle, and she does not care who you think you are. She
Right.
is willing to stand for her castle for all the good it does her. Which of course gets us to our final scene
Mm.
when Amy comes in and she's holding them at bay, and and you can see Mrs. Schultz. She's looking at that knife. She's looking at her steak knife,
Hmm.
and she is gonna get ready. She is waiting for her moment. Because she is ready to kill with the skill of a cobra. And then
Mm.
she gets shot in the back of the head by the Punisher.
Yep.
Um, which freaks her husband out wonderfully. Um,
Mm.
I think we can agree to that her husband
Yeah.
just can't handle how real everything got.
Right. You sort of get the sense though that she wouldn't have reacted this way.
Oh no,
You
not at
almost
all.
get the sense this whole time you thought he was, the man and everything. Turns out he was just the muscle.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, he was doing what he. Well, here's what I'll say. I'm sure he's every bit the sociopath as well.
Right. No, but he wasn't the strategic mastermind that created all this. He was just the one, like the guy who went out and actually did all the stuff. But the strategery and the planning
Yeah.
and the foresight and the decision making came from her.
Yeah. Well, what I will say is I'm not willing to give him that much of a pass on it. I think
Well, no,
I
no, no,
think
no,
that
no,
I
no.
think it
He
was
enjoyed it, and once he
no
understood the plan, he was wholeheartedly on board.
no
I just,
what I will say is I think that they were always a team, but
mm,
she was more sociopathic than him, and that was one of the things he admired about her. Is like
right.
they both absolutely were planning this. They both absolutely were as much a piece of
Right. But
whatever.
but you also have this moment where he wants to do right by John, and she is not about it. She's like, it's just a business decision. He's like, but look, he did everything we asked him to.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
nope, he's got to go. And so, like, she was definitely the backbone of getting
yeah,
that enterprise to where it's at.
yeah. She is, and again, to go to Lady Macbeth, she is very much Lady Macbeth. She is very much of the view of, and for its existence, it is the idea that I only have power if this whole thing, if the wheels stay on the cart. The second the wheels come off the cart, I lose all power I will ever have. And
Right.
I can't risk losing that power.
Mm.
So that you want to be a nice guy, that you want to do a face turn right now, after we've been the Volkov brothers the whole season, I don't care if the wall fell, we're still heels. We're not going to suddenly be the good guys.
Right.
Um,
Essentially, she was saying, he's not family.
well, exactly. We'll
He's
take
not part of our
and
group. He's expendable.
and what she says is, look, we'll take care of his kids. We'll raise his sons as if they were
Yeah.
our own. They'll have every advantage to be every bit as great as David is. Um,
We
but
can Carnegie this thing up.
yeah, exactly. He is not. If he cares about his, and her view is, if he cared about his kids, he would happily take
Mm,
that bullet because
mm,
it's a better
mm,
situation for
mm.
him. But that's the world we find ourselves in.
No, at least that's the narrative we choose.
Yeah, and after she is dead, they basically point out that yeah, after you admitted to killing all those people, yeah, we know how to use the recorder on the phone.
Right.
We know how to
And
use the
again,
FaceTime recorder. So
in that moment, she's like, "Hey, calm down." She knows exactly, the can of worms he might be opening up, and she's trying to warn him, and he's not having it.
yeah,
You know?
but after she's dead,
Mm.
they give him the gun and they say, make your choice. I came in here with two bullets. She made her choice first. Now you
Huh?
got to make it, and then he makes his choice. Um, and here's one thing I was gonna say about differences when the, again these little choices. When
Huh.
Russo dies,
Uh,
they do a beautiful lighting transition on
ooh.
his eyes that lets you know he has died.
Huh.
And it is so perfect because it does show basically it brightens and then it dims, but you still
Ah.
see it. And it's like, oh,
Interesting.
it was really beautiful the way they showed Russo's death to show essentially him leaving his body in as well as you can do in a reality based lighting
Right.
situation. When Schultz shoots himself, the light in the room goes out, which makes no sense. Unless the only light in that room was directly behind his head, it doesn't make a lot of sense that he shoots himself and the lights go out. You get this
Well,
flash of light
maybe,
and then
maybe,
lights.
maybe that's an interesting point. Maybe he didn't shoot himself. Maybe he shot the lamp.
Yeah, who knows? But the implication of everything in its own way, and honestly, if he's still alive, you know that it's all coming out, and so
Yeah.
and David is going to do what David's going to do, but
Unless he goes to the safe and grabs that passport with a different name on it and just runs to Tahiti. I don't know.
yeah, well, and honestly, they're fine with that too. You know,
That's true.
for what it's worth, it's like, yeah, you just go away and this goes away. But
Yeah, they literally said it's your choice.
It's your choice, yeah. But yeah, he does, and it is still a powerful scene. That one small thing beside the point, but
Okay.
it's a
So
powerful.
what bothered you so much?
Okay, so when we get out, so of course we get to our bus station scene. They send
Mm,
Amy
oh,
off to
right.
go with the dive school guy. We see our doctor rushing in with his girlfriend, which I love. I love that whole scene. That, like I said, to me, that's where you end this series. Then they do the 3 month later. Frank's all healed up, has no scars. For some
Right.
reason, but that's fine. We're gonna give them a pass on that. But what bothers me is when the two gangs meet,
Mm,
they're all young guys.
ah.
And it's like, when he killed,
Well,
well, when he kills the kitchen Irish, these did not look like there was.
maybe that's sort of a window into the degradation of the world itself.
I mean, it's
That
entirely
kids at
possible,
that
yeah.
age could be committing that many murders that they need to be taken out. I'm sure Punisher doesn't take these things that lightly, So
And while I understand that as a premise, I'm not doubting that for a second. I don't doubt for a minute that the actors playing these. Well, here's what I was going to say: as a casting director, I would have made sure I had at least a couple of older dogs in there, a couple of guys who clearly had the bone and the muscle, who clearly had the blood on their hands, and the men
yeah, but
following
no,
them.
but that's my point. But they might have had blood on their hands. They might have been young guys, but the world
Yeah.
is so shitty out there that
Oh,
they do have tons of blood on their hands.
I understand that. I'm just saying you have to communicate that to the audience as well.
Ah,
And to me, what they communicated was these are a bunch of punk kids that he's just murdering. These are essentially Amy's friends again.
yeah, yeah,
Because Amy's
yeah.
friends weren't up to no good. They certainly, and I don't know if any of them had blood on their hands. And not for nothing, I don't know how many of those guys actually had blood on their hands except for selling drugs.
Hmm.
Because this is a group, a core gang members, and yeah, you got your leaders there, but the fact of the matter is that they are brought together in this moment to sort of to ostensibly to work out a peace.
Yeah, and I
Um,
see what you're saying. It was a poor casting choice because it requires too much work on the viewer's end to sort of compensate for that without
exactly.
giving you. Yeah, no, I dig it. I agree.
And while we all love Punisher going, also I just felt that was just
Yeah,
a. I
yeah,
didn't like that Punisher scene just because it seemed too weird. Just like, whoa, it seemed too Rambo-y. It seemed too
yeah.
Sylvester Stallone. And
Right, and I don't think they deserved that.
well, I feel that the Punisher prior to that has always been much more a distance killer,
Hmm.
much more a guy who knows what he's doing. He's not walking in saying
Yeah,
he's not saying equip and then opening up his guns because they all had guns too.
yeah,
And it's essentially the second he starts firing, they're all going to start firing back at him.
yeah.
You
When
know
have you known the Punisher to be that dumb about an engagement? Usually,
exactly. And
much more.
so to
Yeah,
me,
no,
that was a very poor ending for the series, and that really
and it wasn't necessary at all.
no, it wasn't. It literally was not. You could have ended this with that scene in the bus station,
Yeah.
and then there's the second movie of the Incredible Hulk, the TV series from the 70s,
Hmm.
ends with essentially. So the first one is he becomes the Hulk. It's a two-parter. He becomes the Hulk, deals with Jack McGee, goes on his adventure. He has to walk away because his friend dies and everyone thinks he's dead. Second episode, he winds up at like this like ranch where this woman is gaslighting and munchausening the heir to the household, making her think that
Hmm.
she's sick when she's really not. Um, and whole storyline there. But Banner winds up in it. The whole point of that is he's going to finally get the X-ray reversal that they talk about this in the first episode, or in the first 2 episode arc, as the way that might be able to cure the Hulk. And at the very end of it, they actually have him get the X-ray reversal, and then they end that episode. Now, if that had been the final episode, did he cure the Hulk? Did he not cure the Hulk? It doesn't matter. It was a good episode. It was self-contained. And for those who want to believe that he cured the Hulk, that's great. For those who want to say, no, the Hulk is going to come back, which of course he obviously did, that's possible too. And to end it with some kind of, with this coda that just says, and now the Punisher's all out going to be the Punisher that you know from the comics. I felt it was cheap, and it was a cheat. It was, when they do fan service in the MCU, when they have Captain America pick up Thor's hammer, there's actually a lot to that. Yes, it is absolutely fan service, but at the same time, there is drama that has taken several stories to tell to get us to that point.
Right.
And to just say, okay, he's the Punisher from the comics now. It wasn't necessary, and to me, it hurt the series as a whole.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of somebody thinking that they've won the race already and closing their eyes and pumping their fists and not noticing the racer behind them speeding up and overtaking them at the very last second. It's like they lost their focus because they did such a good job and they were already celebrating and didn't truly analyze the last exclamation point they wanted to put on it and didn't think too hard about the last one because they thought they couldn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Because, and again, like I said, we didn't need to know what Madani was doing. Madani was fine.
Yeah.
We know she turned in. She turned in her badge. Okay, so she turned in her badge. She's got a good resume. And her parents are loaded. She's fine. No one was worried about. Gee, what will Madani do next? And we didn't need to know what Punisher was going to do next. In fact, I think that they haven't ended any of the other ones with that. I think that that doing that here. Honestly, if I'm going to say anything, if anything, what they might have been doing that for was just to F you to Marvel. To say, yep, here's your character now.
Ooh.
You dig your way out of this. So, I don't think
that's an interesting thing. I don't think, but that's an interesting thought.
It's an interesting thought. I don't think it actually has any weight because I'm certain that Marvel is more than happy to ignore any aspect of canon not done under their auspices. So, no, that's fine. They'll reshoot that scene with older guys.
Yeah.
They'll reshoot the scene so we know how dangerous these people are. Because that's what Marvel does. But so, but aside from that, it was an amazing
series. Unbelievable. It really, when they did the first season of Daredevil and all the promise it had, and then they delivered us a anti-hero against him that was worthy of how great of a show that was, and they catapulted it into its own series, and it ended up being exactly what you wanted. Mm-hmm. It was just as good writing-wise, plot-wise. They took just as much effort and care with the way they told the story, with the fight choreography, with every subtle little detail. They did such a great job. And to see a show, especially in this, where all the shows are getting condensed and small, they gave it a whole 13-episode run to tell this beautiful story. And it really showed what good they were doing at Netflix. We're not going to talk about the guy with the iron fist.
Yes, well, he's his own thing. We'll let him be. He is the Inhumans of the Netflix universe. Same producer, so tells you everything you need to know. Okay, so Mozz, I'm going to say those are our final thoughts. Unless you have one last thing to add.
No, I think it was a fun ride, and we had a good time.
It was a great ride. It was worthy of everything we were waiting for. And I will say I'm gonna still say this was an A+ episode, even though they failed the extra credit. They had the extra credit wrong. But let's be honest, that was just the extra credit.
Right. It's still a 100. It wasn't a 103.
Yeah, exactly. So let us call that a night, Maz. And
On to Jessica Jones.
oh yeah, kids, coming soon. It's Maz, it's Chaz, and we really want to be your friends. Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad that's back.
Okay. Yes, I'm so good. And let me tell you something, because I could not resist. I did binge the whole series.
Oh.
It lives up to what we want to end on. I
Mm-hmm.
honestly, if I'm going to say anything else on this, it's like the little falter at the end of this one is maybe just so this didn't seem too perfect before Jessica Jones came and gave us a really perfect ending. Because the
I
Jessica
can't wait.
Jones story is so incredibly. Okay, Maz. In the meantime, if people would like to talk to you about Jessica Jones or the Punisher or Agents of Shield, how can they find you?
Or they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way the way our Maz and Paz once did at superconnectivityblog at gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when my phone's not out of power or anything else at Charlie Esser. That's
ECHARLIESSER. Look for two pigs in the middle for calling.
there you go.
Love it.
I
Love it.
love it. He has to be a part of the show. Okay. Dearest penitents, I absolve you of all your sins. Go in peace and sin no more. And if you do, you're out of luck. This was your last chance at just punishments. Good night.